Hey, welcome to Men's Couch. Today I am here with Dan Griffin, and I'm, as always, Micah Blackwell, here to talk about men's mental health and uh, explore the conversation on that. And yeah, so I guess I guess I'll try to, I guess I'll start by saying how I found you. I think it was through Spotify, and I was looking at different men's mental health podcasts, and yours came up, and I like that you frame it as the Man Rules podcast, and it's about like it's kind of like uh, the rules of that were kind of given, and I like the title. So I really appreciate that you are like in the conversation of men's mental health, and that you are also um, like you do different topics. That's another thing that's really cool. So um, I guess I'll start off by saying I can start off by like not to like get too personal, but like what kind of I know like you mentioned some of your story in the podcast, but I don't like necessarily remember everything of it. And I guess I'll start off by saying like what kind of inspired you to go on this journey, like of um, whether it be inspiring other men or um, going like starting your own journey, like what kind of like led you to that.
Sure. Yeah. Micah, thanks for having me. I love that you're in college and you're having this conversation. That's how the
Yeah,
times have changed, which I love, right?
yeah, Gen Z.
Yeah. Look, you guys take some hits from us Gen Xers and the
Yeah,
millennials as far
my
as
my
things.
parents are Gen X.
Yeah. Right. I'm
Yeah,
sure I'm old enough to be your parent. I'm sure,
yeah.
and it's a wonderful thing to see how that is changing. I got sober in a 12-step program 30 years
Hmm.
ago, and 30 years ago we didn't really talk about mental health or men's mental health in the 12-step culture. So I had to kind of discover that on my own, kind of on my own.
Hmm.
And so it's two things, right? My own journey, personal journey, is what ultimately has led me to do the work that I do, as is often the case.
Okay.
But I believe very, very strongly, like, especially for the younger generations, like how do I say this? I was talking to a friend about this morning. I said, look, we're now living in a society that thinks podcasts can change people's lives. And I disagree with that, despite
Yeah.
the fact that I have a podcast. And the reason I say that is because no podcast has ever changed anybody's life. The
Yeah.
only thing that's
Yeah.
changed somebody's life is a person who's willing to change their life.
Yeah, like
And they're
their
willing to
own.
take the action to do that. So you might get information from a podcast, but you
Hmm.
can be just as hopeless, lost, disconnected, listening to 8 podcasts a day,
Hmm.
as you are. And I think so. The challenge is that as long as we have human beings, the only thing that is going to actually effectuate change in our lives is the actual steps that we take to change our lives. And I was, I had a very painful an interesting journey of masculinity as a young man. I was treated
Hmm.
with growth hormones to grow,
Hmm.
and that was a very shameful. And that was on top of growing up in an alcoholic home, an abusive,
Interesting.
angry alcoholic home. So, if you're a boy and you're small, which I'm not anymore. One, I'm
Yeah.
not a boy anymore,
Yeah.
right? But I'm not small anymore. I'm lucky in the sense that I'm 6 foot tall. I have a pretty
Hmm.
good presence, amongst people. But at the time, I was 5 feet tall in high school, hadn't hit
Hmm.
puberty. That didn't change, and I was miserable all throughout my high school, my freshman year. Got really depressed, really just withdrawn. And then sophomore year, that continued until, I actually had a bit of a crisis at home, and my parents kind of finally asked me what was going on. And now this has
Like,
been.
can I pause you like for a second?
Yeah.
Because it's funny that even though your story is is very completely different than mine, it's very similar, like very, very similar. Because like, especially even like the same time that it happened, like that, not to like go, not to like assume anything about yours, but like for me, I didn't like seek out help until my sophomore year of high school, which is interesting. But I didn't want to like interrupt you. I was like, this is very similar.
Well, yeah,
So,
and I think that's part of it, right? Is if we start telling our stories and we start sharing our truth, then other men have an opportunity to say, "Hey, yeah, me too."
yeah,
Right? And that's a very, very powerful statement. Not to take, not to take away from the Me Too movement,
yeah,
right?
but like
Which is
as
exactly
saying
what
like,
it is, though. But the
yeah,
Me Too, the Me Too experience is all human beings, right? Where we
yeah,
get to hear somebody else's experience and we get to say, "Me too." I had that. And whether you're what, 21, 20?
I'm 20.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're 20 years old. I'm 52.
yeah,
And yet we're connecting around this experience, and
yeah,
so that's part of the beauty of it. And what I'll tell you is that experience affected my mental health. That experience affected me socially. It affected me psychologically, spiritually. And I did grow. I did get shots from my sophomore year into the very beginning of my junior year. It was humiliating. It was a big secret, frankly, and a big, big source of shame. And that created, though, an experience for me where I felt like I was always outside of the traditional masculine experience.
Oh my gosh.
I
Yeah.
created a story in my life that said, "I'm not a man, I'll never be a man."
Or you're not like, you kind of look at you, okay, I'm not man enough because of like this thing that I perceive as a flaw.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that I've realized is that the majority of men have that message inside of them.
Yeah.
The man rules, what's so powerful about the man rules is the universality of it. The man rules, just to expand on that a little bit. Well, before I do that, I'll just kind of, I'll catch up to kind of the man rules component. So I was living kind of two lives. I had an external self that was 6 feet tall, good looking, outgoing, whatever.
We talk about the external mask.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that on the show.
Internally, right?
Yeah.
Deep insecurity,
Yeah.
lots of fear,
Yeah.
lots of shame. That and guys don't talk to anybody about that. I would get drunk and talk to women about it, and as a guy who identifies as heterosexual, I would talk to these young women, but I did it manipulatively. I did it somewhat to open up, but mostly it was to get laid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it really wasn't genuine. So I got sober, fast forward. I got sober, and then I started going to 12-step meetings. And here's the other thing, and I think this is valuable, especially from a Gen Z perspective, because you guys, I think, have a greater level of consciousness, quite frankly, than a lot of my generation. At the same time that I got sober, I got introduced to feminism and gender studies, and I ended up doing what was called a sociology of women class my senior it might have been my senior year, could have been my end of my junior year. And so at the same time that I got exposed to recovery, I got exposed to this experience of feminism or gender studies or gender equality or just talking about gender.
Yeah.
For the most part, people don't sit around talking about gender, and that got me curious. Even though it was focused on women, it got me curious about men, and that curiosity never left. I got sober. I went to the University of Kansas, and I did my master's research on the social construction of masculinity in the culture of Alcoholics Anonymous.
That's very interesting.
And it was the first of its kind. It was the first qualitative study in that. But what was fascinating to me about it, Micah, what was most fascinating to me about it was the fact that again, like somebody who felt like he was standing outside of masculinity, then I go to this 12-step meeting, and one of the first things that happened when I walked through the door, this is 30 years ago, mind you, one of the first things that happened is a guy said, "Welcome," and he tried to hug me.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? It's like, why are you, like we don't hug. Men don't hug.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I always say, and I didn't know whether I should punch him in the face or collapse in his arms.
Yeah, is that tension, that struggle with accepting, trying to get out of the masculinity and the man rules that you always grew up with, and then maybe embracing something that it's awkward or scary at first. It's it's that tension.
That's a part of it, right? Yeah, it's absolutely the tension. In fact, it's interesting that you talk about the tension, because what I identified ultimately, right, from that experience in my first meeting, because that wasn't all that happened my first meeting. And again, remember, I'm now been trained to be thinking sociologically. Mm-hmm. I became a sociology major. I focused on sociology. I was thinking about it. And so I'm thinking about systems, I'm thinking about interpreting social behaviors, I'm looking at all these things, and I'm like, in that meeting, men were talking about fear, men were talking about relationships, men were sharing the insides that I never share.
Did it go against maybe what you thought? What you think what your expectations were?
It 100% went against that. And in fact,
that's interesting.
What became the kind of one of my core areas of my work is what I realized, and it's not just 12-step culture, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just a 12-step culture. It is therapy. It is treatment for addiction or mental health or that sort of thing. It's this whole milieu, this whole area of work and services, right? Mm-hmm. That there's these two competing experiences, right? This tension that you talked about. You have the man rules, right? So what are the man rules? Don't cry, don't ask for help, don't be vulnerable. It's all these things that even your generation has grown up with. Yeah. And even though your generation says, "Oh well, we don't really, follow those,"
it's
when
still
you dig,
ingrained.
Yeah, it's very ingrained. Yeah. And when you dig deeper, I've noticed that it affects younger guys differently. It's not as obvious, and so in fact, it might be even a little more dangerous and insidious, because as soon as you say, as a young person, that doesn't apply to me. Then you're not looking anymore. There's no curiosity. And so that's what I've seen play out. But so you have these man rules.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
Let me just finish this part.
Okay.
So you have these man rules, right? Don't cry, don't ask for help, don't be vulnerable, use sex as a weapon, avoid intimacy, always be right, be powerful. Yeah. And then you move into the 12-step culture, you move into treatment, you move into therapy, and then what are we asking people to do? Be vulnerable, share feelings, ask for help, compromise, learn intimacy over sex, let go of power, let go of control. And so it's like this massive tension that exists. And so your question was, was it something different than what you expected? Hell yes, it was something different than what I expected. The last thing I expected was to hear guys talking about what I had been hiding and feeling ashamed of for years.
Yeah.
So go ahead. What's your question?
I think it was like, oh yeah, I was gonna say like it just like maybe like the man rules or like the mask of masculinity, they show up in different ways for like my generation. It's like they still exist, but they just show up in different ways. That's all I was saying.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think, like for instance, if I got your friends all together, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I had you and all your friends, and I said, name me the man rules, right? When I talk about the man rules and what we've learned as boys to be men and what it means to be a real man and all that, at least so far, every group I've talked to, even the young guys, give me the exact same answers that the older guys give me. Give me the exact same answer. But then what you guys say is, okay, yeah, sure, but that's my dad. That's not me, right?
Yeah.
And oh yeah,
it's hard to see it in
we don't really believe in that. We don't really follow that. And so that's what I'm talking about. So as soon as you guys say that doesn't apply to me, then there's no curiosity and there's no opportunity to see the ways in which it still plays out in your lives, but maybe in more subtle ways. And look, I'm super happy for younger guys and kind of, some of, what they're able to kind of process. But when it comes to guys still like really having some like strong emotional intelligence, I mean, I don't see that with my daughter's friends, and she's 15.
Yeah.
And it's because they still don't have permission. It's still not safe for young guys to like just really allow themselves to be an authentic human.
Yeah. It's hard to notice it within yourself, or like it's hard to notice like the man rules within yourself without excusing them. But I think it's so important to, at least for me, it was important to see where it showed up, because like I don't like kind of like how you felt growing up. I didn't like describe myself as like the stereotypical guy, or I didn't describe myself as that. But
are you picking up my dog?
Oh yeah, I can. Yeah, I can. It's fine.
Okay, I don't know. She's there must be like the male person. Do you edit?
Yeah, I can edit. Yeah.
Okay, we might as well just let her, because she'll bark and then she'll be done. But it's probably not ideal to have it in the background.
Yeah, I mean I don't mind it, but
okay.
I think it's hard to recognize within yourself. And especially as someone that didn't really like felt like I had, because like for me, I describe myself as like highly sensitive, like very like person that likes musicals, not into sports. So I describe myself as kind of like that, and it was hard to see like even like the man rules within myself for a while. And I had to have like other people point out to me that these were the things that were kind of hurting me instead of helping me, like not asking for help, like wearing a mask or whatever. And I think it's definitely important to recognize within yourself, and that's been part of my journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think like at this point, what I've identified at least is I've identified 4 different types of masculinity, okay, in my studies. Traditional masculinity, those tend to be older guys, but not only, I mean, and geographically it can vary, but traditional masculinity is the guys who are just kind of like, hey, I'm like, they follow the man rules, but it's not like super intense, but they follow them, right? Then there's what I discovered in my master's research by interviewing guys in Alcoholics Anonymous, and what I found was that inherently, by being part of 12-step culture and things like that, therapy and treatment, people, men kind of express what's called a relaxed masculinity. So it's like, and frankly, what I would say about relaxed masculinity is that's Gen Z. And so what relaxed masculinity is it's like, I express myself differently, I'm a little more in touch with my feeling, I do this, but I haven't necessarily done what you're talking about. I haven't really stepped back and evaluated how I do masculinity. I haven't evaluated kind of what's really important. What kind of man do I really want to be? And really, how do I show up as that man? And then how do I not show up as that man? And really kind of taking a look at that. Which then leads to what I call conscious masculinity. And that's really kind of the core concept, and that's certainly what I aspire to. And that's this idea that I really pay attention on a daily basis to the kind of man that I am. In fact, I was just at a meeting, where some guys were talking, and like one of the guys, it was just, there was some really offensive things that some guys were doing, and I was just kind of like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And I was getting a little annoyed and stuff, but one of the guys spoke up and he said, I really respect you, to this one guy, because you've taught me not to care what other people think about me. And I'm like, you know what? That can be healthy, but that can be really unhealthy. Because the truth is, when you're in relationship, when you're connected to people, you should care what other people think of you.
Yeah.
I care what my wife thinks of me. I care what my daughter thinks of me. I care what my friends think of me. I care what my mom and my sister think of me. I care who they experience.
Yeah,
and
how
if
I'm
it's
coming across.
And if it's in alignment with who I say I am and who I want to be. So in that regard, I really care.
And that's like being conscious.
And that's the consciousness, right? So that's the consciousness, is really reflecting. So conscious masculinity is driven by what I call enlightened choice, right? So that you're choosing on a regular, day-to-day basis the man you want to be. If you choose not to ask for help, it's because it's what's right for that situation. It's not because of some shame-based decision where you don't want to look stupid for asking for help and feel weak as a man.
Yeah.
And so the fourth one, so we had traditional, we had relaxed, we have conscious. The fourth one is, and I don't like to use this term, but it's what we would call toxic masculinity. I just call it unhealthy masculinity.
Yeah.
Right? Because toxic masculinity, I don't know, it doesn't resonate with me. I like to talk about the toxic culture of masculinity, because to me that's much more honest than just talking about.
And also, like, it's been used a lot, and it's kind of.
It's been very much used, and it's used against. It's used as a weapon, as a way to just dismiss a man. Oh, he's just a toxic man. I'm like, I think it might be a little more complicated than that. In fact, frankly, coming back to this conversation of mental health, I believe all of those unhealthy behaviors, or at least most of them, other than when you're dealing with like sociopaths and psychopaths and that sort of thing, it's mostly driven by trauma, untreated trauma, and shame.
Yeah. Shame is a huge thing. Shame is like, like for me, I've definitely had like a special interest in shame, because like I don't know if I told you, but I'm a counseling psychology major, and that's something that I kind of want to really like study. It's like, how does like shame affect people, especially men, because like you said, trauma and shame are like linked together.
Yes.
So.
Well, I think it's wonderful, and if I can impart on you one thing, it would be this: make sure that your self-care is number one.
Yeah.
Because there are so many, and I'll just say this, and it's not going to be popular necessarily. There are so many unwell psychologists.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
they're unwell because they do not practice what they preach. They
Yeah.
are unwell because for them it's an intellectual thing.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's really, really unfortunate because it absolutely limits their effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
But two, it is just, to me, it's a great kind of hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm counseling people on how to help them, how to change their lives, how to get
Mm-hmm.
over various things, and yet I'm not willing to do the same work.
Yeah.
So I'm a big, I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of my big kind of platforms, I guess you could say, that I've used over the years, that I've spoken to over the years, is the importance of us doing our own work. And when it comes to men and men doing their own work, it's even more challenging because, like I pointed out at the beginning, if I'm a man and I'm considering my mental health, for first off,
Mm-hmm.
right, like that's already against the man roles,
Yeah. Yeah.
is to be thinking about my mental health.
Yeah.
Second, if I don't have any real practice looking within, I'm not really sure what's going on, and so I need help. But in order to get help, again, that's against the man rules. And so, like,
So there's, for me, that's why I said that it seems to be like a lot of those barriers internally with even like, because you have to come to a place within yourself where you're, where you are connected to yourself, if that makes sense. You're
yeah,
connected to yourself in that way before you even like go to therapy or whatever. And I feel like that's maybe that could be a problem with some men, is that we're not connected to ourselves and our experience, so we don't really, we're just like, oh well. So
well, we've been raised, right? I mean, I really do think bring things back to the man rules and kind of how we've been raised. We've been
yeah.
raised to be disconnected.
Hmm.
We've been raised to be disconnected from ourselves and from others. I mean, like, genuinely disconnected. I mean, we can,
Yeah.
you and I could know each other for years and we could talk about sports and weather and news and all that stuff, and yet maybe never talk about what's really going on in our lives, our insecurity in our relationships, our insecurity
Hmm.
within ourselves, our fears about the future, our, whatever it is. And
Hmm.
so that's part of my mission, is to try to normalize the idea that the men's inner lives are as real as and important as our external presentation,
Hmm.
and that we can actually make them congruent, which is a really wonderful thing. It could be a very powerful experience. And when it comes to mental health and men's mental health, I mean, what we have to do, like when a man asks for help, we have to understand what that means most of the time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like how significant it is. I mean, we have to treat it as like precious, that this is what's happening in this moment, is that this
Yeah.
man is
Like
is
you
asking
like.
for help and is coming forward. And I don't know that psychologists and therapists have been very well trained to work with men, to understand men's issues, and to know.
Hmm.
I mean, all my work is focused around dads and fathers, or men and dads, and trauma and shame, but all for men and in the context of masculinity. And so one of the sayings of my company is, we teach you what you should have learned in school.
Hmm.
Because every time I ask audiences, I'm like, how many of you were taught any of this? Rarely do I see a hand. And when I do get a hand, I'll say, well, what parts were you taught? And almost never, actually never, have I had somebody sitting in my audience who's been taught what I teach.
Yeah, so it's like those foundational things, and I think just starting there with with having like the conversation about men, it's starting at those foundational things that maybe were missed, or maybe that we just didn't receive. And I think it's important to, when we talk about men, to acknowledge that, instead of just, because it's easy to acknowledge like all like statistics on male suicide or whatever, but like those foundational things, I think sometimes are it can be missed.
I would say that's absolutely correct, and I would also say that some of the things that are changing the game are the fact that you have athletes coming forward and talking about their mental health, talking about their recovery from addiction, talking, you got artists and really famous people. I mean, when Jay-Z talked about seeing a therapist, it was a very interesting response from his followers. And some of them, right, he took a lot of hits. He took a lot of hits for putting it out there that he had gone to therapy. And yet, anybody who knows a little bit about his story knows, like, it's probably the only thing that saved his marriage.
And it's like, it's also that risk that he did, to the risk of vulnerability, to share his story, but also like, even if it like might have like, even if like some people had a weird reaction to it, it also like helped other men be inspired to pursue that.
Absolutely. And even some of the people that were reacting to it, their reactions were usually shame-based, and it's just an emotional reaction, and at some level it very possibly got through that, holy shit, Jay-Z. And then Eminem, he's been open about his recovery, and there's like older singers and actors,
I think that's part of Gen X. I don't know, I think that is Gen X.
What?
Like Eminem and Jay-Z, I think that's Gen X.
That's Gen X, which is a big deal.
That is a big deal.
It's a big deal, man. Like Gen X, I mean, I'm Gen X, but Gen X is really kind of who started it on a collective kind of movement. I mean, it was the baby boomers, right? The ones ahead of Gen X, who they planted the seed. They started the conversation. They had the Cultural Revolution. They had Woodstock. They had the hippie movement. They had all of this. The black movement. I mean, the black empowerment movement. That was the 60s, right?
Yeah,
and that started, and then that led to the Black Panthers, and that led to, there was all this stuff that happened, but it wasn't until Gen Xers came and started doing like these collective sort of narratives and expressions. And then now the millennials and the Gen Zs are taking it to a completely different level, to the point where we have college students doing podcasts on men's mental health. And it's a big deal, and it's a wonderful thing. It's growth for our culture, for our society as a whole. And that's, to me, that's a it's a wonderful thing. In addition to being in recovery, I also have bipolar. And I just had a guy yesterday say, he came up to me and he's like, so I understand you're bipolar. And I said, no, I have bipolar.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So,
right? It's a big difference.
Yeah.
And he was kind of like a little bit, he's like, oh, right. Yeah, I get that. I get the language. And I was like,
the language is like...
I was like, yeah, that actually makes a big difference. Because
like, this isn't me.
It's not me.
I
don't identify, it's not the entirety of who I am, right?
Yeah.
And yet, if I don't take care of myself, then, look at poor Kanye West. I mean, that man is a poster child for untreated bipolar. Probably some untreated trauma and shame as well, I'm quite sure. But it's just kind of spiraled for him. And then he came to believe that medication, which unfortunately in minority communities, especially the black community, there's evidence. There's evidence to to support the idea that medication is used to control people. Medication is used to control a population and used to harm a population. And so, like, how do you get over that? Well, one of the ways you get over that is that you have some amazing black therapists who are on Instagram now and TikTok talking about mental health, talking about the value of mental health, or you have shows like Unprisoned. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
With it's amazing. It's an amazing show, but I think it matters that Kerry Washington, who's the lead, and Delroy Lindo, who plays her father, right? I think it matters that it's representative, right? That there's representation there. It's a black cast primarily, but not solely, and she's a therapist. And so it's like challenging some of the knee-jerk reactions in minority communities that really are against therapy, are against talking about mental health, are against, and it's still strong in the white community, but frankly, I mean, therapy has been viewed as a white intervention for people with too much money to whine about their problems because they don't have anything else to do. And so we have all of these elements that are a part of the overall conversation of how do we have honest and open conversations about men's mental health.
It's starting out. It was like, it was definitely a challenge for me because starting out, I wasn't I would say like a person that was openly talking about it. So I would just say it's been a journey for me. The podcast helped me to become comfortable just in general talking about men's mental health. But starting out, I wanted to try and explore and just to see what would happen. And all throughout doing the podcast, I just realized that it's needed than I thought initially. Because when I started, I was like, oh really? Do people really want to hear this? Do people really? But it's actually more needed, and I haven't gotten a person that said you should stop doing this. People are saying this is a conversation that needs to be had.
Which is huge. How many men's mental health podcasts are out there? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. No.
I mean, I
listen to a lot, but I don't know.
I should know. I mean, it's one of those things where it's I wonder how many are even out there versus all the different. And then you have some podcasts out there that purport to speak about healthy masculinity, but what they're really doing is reinforcing some of the worst stereotypes of masculinity. Get laid, get rich, and it doesn't matter kind of how you feel.
All those things that feed the not good enough narrative about who you are. And it's like you said, it's unintentionally not helping.
I mean, it is very interesting where we're at as a society now. We have a president who exemplifies unhealthy masculinity, or at least traditional masculinity, and he constantly kind of overlaps into unhealthy masculinity as far as I'm concerned. And this is not a political statement. I'm not speaking as a Republican or a Democrat. I'm just simply saying it's a objective statement to say he absolutely endorses traditional masculinity. He absolutely falls into unhealthy masculinity a lot. And clearly probably has mental health issues of his own that he's never addressed and never will address, more than likely, because of his generation. I mean, he's 80, going to be 80
Oh
or whatever.
yeah,
You know?
boomer generation. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, so we have that, but the thing you have to think about even bigger than that is we as a society elected him and elected him overwhelmingly. So what does that say right now about what we think a real
Like when we think
effective
of like
male
a
leader should look like?
yeah, when we think of leadership, like what does like what are our notions about that, and that's important. Like how does that affect like the social perspective of like a healthy leader or a qualified leader? I think that goes into that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I think this conversation around men's mental health, one of the things that we have to do is we have to create a space for it. Two,
Yeah.
we have to create a space for men to be willing to, like, you know, there's that whole thing in Fight Club. Have you seen the movie Fight Club?
I haven't seen it.
Okay,
No.
that's from my generation, but it's worth watching. But in Fight Club, the movie, they say, number one rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club.
Oh.
The number one rule of the man rules is you don't talk about the man rules.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like, so how do you get men to talk openly about the challenges they have being a man? How do you get older men to acknowledge the pain of trying to live up to this certain kind of idea of masculinity? And how do you get younger men to say, like, more thoughtfully, this is the kind of man I want to be, and this is how I show up that way, and then this is how I don't? And then how do you make it safe for men to say, I'm afraid, I don't know what I'm doing, I need help? And we're not there yet. We're getting better. And the safer men feel in certain pockets and, you know, like certain areas. The 12-step culture, I think, is getting safer and safer for that kind of stuff. It's changed a lot in the 30 years that I've been doing it. And so I think that's very positive.
It's definitely a lot more nuanced and complicated and more messy. And that's what I definitely noticed with like talking to the people that I did over the podcast. And I also like I kind of like the questions like in the back of my mind. I also wanted to like ask about like your work and like how like what you've noticed, like maybe common themes that you've noticed with men that are just common themes that you notice.
Sure. So a lot of my work is with the people who work with men and training them to work more effectively with men, and then I do some work with men as well. I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, for your listeners, they want to learn more about me and what I do. There's the Man Rules podcast, which is no longer an active podcast, but all of the but you can find all the episodes, and I'm very proud of what I did, and I'm very proud.
I'll leave links in the description.
Yeah, please do. And then and dangriffin.com, that's my website, which I'm in the process of totally redoing the website, and I'm excited for that. You know, it's been interesting, Micah. I mean, like, first off, it started off with men.
Okay.
And then I added fathers. And adding fathers has been very powerful too, because I'm a father, and I'm a father of a 15-year-old, so I've been doing it a while, and it's the most amazing experience of my life, and I love my daughter more than anything. Like, I didn't know this kind of love was possible. I mean, you know, people say that all the time, but you can say it. You can kind of be like, oh my God, like the love a parent has for their child. That's great. You can say it. But until you experience that kind of love, it is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so I fight my conditioning as a man to be able to show up for my daughter. And I have since the day she was born. Since the day she was born, I fought my conditioning to show up as the father I truly wanted to be. And it's led to some really awesome stuff. I mean, I last year we released the first curriculum first trauma-informed curriculum for dads called Amazing Dads. And that's available from Wiley and Sons, and it's on Amazon or whatever. But here's what I get from men. I get a lot of thank yous because they feel more permission to speak honestly about their lives after spending time with me.
Okay.
And that's a real gift. And from the professionals, I hear exactly what I told you earlier. Why didn't I learn this in school?
Yeah.
This makes complete sense. Why didn't I get taught? Like, I bet you now are not being taught specific skills to work with men and truly understand gender conditioning and how it affects men's experiences from beginning of life to end of life.
No.
Anything like that?
I do. Listen, I have like a whole bookshelf of books on men. I didn't like learn any of that.
Yeah. And why? Like, why isn't there a class? I mean, it's amazing, right? So
yeah.
So what I hear from the professionals is, it's a little frustrating, frankly, because I've been doing it for almost 20 years, and so, I'll have a professional who'll be like, "Did you just do this last year, 2 years ago?" I was like, "Oh man, go to my website, do something." So that's frustrating. But behind that comment is, this is really eye-opening, and I feel like, because the thing I told you about self-care, I use this concept called the water, and you probably, I don't know if you saw my videos online, but there's a concept that I use called the water, and basically the idea is we're all in the water, and gender conditioning is part of the water. So we all have gender conditioning, just like we all have racial conditioning, right?
Yeah.
I've been conditioned to see people of color a certain way and to have judgments about them immediately and to do all this sort of stuff. And I either pay attention to that. Yeah, exactly. Implicit bias, right?
Yeah.
Unconscious bias, implicit bias. It's very, very powerful. And we all have it. And, some people talk about it as being a dominance thing, but that's not actually true. We all have it.
Yeah.
All communities, all people have implicit bias, and there's tons of unconscious bias against dads. And there's tons of implicit bias against men. And it drives...
They have trickled down through the generations.
Yes, and I can tell you it is one of the biggest factors in why we're not dealing more effectively with men's mental health. Because it's not just men that have the unconscious bias, it's women, it's professionals, it's this, it's that. It's like...
So it's really just like trying to, instead of being... Like, it's really about being curious about men's experience, like developing it. That's like, for me, like, I have even like as a guy, but like I have like my own experience, but I'm like still like really curious about the experience of men and like my peers, of like their experience of masculinity and how, like you said, with the man roles, and how that affects us internally, and how we experience ourselves, and how that leads to shame. Like that's definitely something that I think takes a lot of more like curiosity than just assuming something based on someone's actions, or like judging like a guy.
It's
because
huge.
It is easy. It's easy to say like, oh, this toxic masculinity or whatever.
Right.
But
as opposed to, oh, this is how this guy. I mean, honestly, this is one of the things I teach the professionals. I'm like, it's all about safety.
Yeah.
These guys, this is what they learned at some point, how to feel safe. And they feel safe by making fun of you, or they feel safe. They protect themselves with the little things. It doesn't mean that it's okay. Offensive behavior is not okay. Inappropriate behavior is not okay. But like you said, maybe some empathy, maybe a little bit of understanding. And I think that's what professionals really appreciate about the work that I do and the work that I teach them, is it's like they realize how rarely they take into consideration the context of gender conditioning in men's behavior and in men's responses to services. So it's not just like men's behavior and how men are trying to figure that out. It's like how they respond to a therapeutic intervention or any kind of therapeutic relationship. And
that's so big.
Right?
It's
So there's
huge.
it's a lot. It's a lot, right? But when you use a gender responsive lens, you can reach men so much more effectively.
Yeah, I think that's definitely important, because I think if we try to like apply the same perspective to people, to people that identify as female, and we like maybe like in a therapeutic setting or whatever, then it doesn't really like we might have like good intentions, but it doesn't really like you said, doesn't really like reach men, because we grew of how we're raised and how we grew up differently.
Well, it's the classic sales sort of mantra: know your audience.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, you said you noticed that that it's more often like it's appreciated, like the work that you do, and understanding that. Also, when I did listen to your podcast, I like the friendship episode, because that's something that's something that like I'm a huge. You'll see that like on my podcast. Like I'm a huge. I don't know if you call me a friendship enthusiast. I don't know, but like it's something that like I'm really like passionate about and want to write a book on.
Yeah.
So because I think
that was a good one. That was fun. That was my friend Bob, and it was like at the end, like telling each other we loved each other, and and it was genuine. It was sincere. Yeah. I mean, look, we as men have to fight for connection. We have to fight for authentic connection, and it's leaders like you who are going to help men find it and help. And I mean, like it or not, right? There's something inside of you that has leadership that is going to be the one who takes the steps before other people do. And
I appreciate that.
And it's that, but you got to listen to that.
Yeah.
You got to listen to that and not see it as I have in the past. Not see it resentfully. Not see it as like, oh, why do I have to be the one?
I struggle with that a lot.
It's a privilege. It's a privilege, and it's a calling, and it's a gift. It's a gift from God, a gift from the Great Spirit, whatever you want to call it. It's a gift that you were put on this earth to be the one.
I struggle with that, because
and you're gonna struggle more. I'll tell you this. You're gonna struggle more if you fight it.
Yeah, because I think it's because like of how just how I am, and just I can go into a lot of tangents, but just how I like am passionate about that, and I'm passionate about having an authentic connection. It's something that like have to fight for. And I like that you said that it's like it's a gift, because for a while I always thought like, hey, like what's wrong with me that I am not I'm desiring like an authentic connection, but like what I'm getting back is like more of like a surface level thing. And that was like me for a while before I met like
story of my life, man.
Yeah, before I met more people, it was just like, well, why? Like, do I need to like change my expectations? And then it was just like no, it's just something that, like you said, you have to fight for, because
you got to fight for, and you have to be true. I mean, I know we say it all the time, but you have to be true to who you are.
Yeah.
And at 20, do you have a really clear idea of who you are? I don't know. I certainly didn't. But you have some idea. So you know what direction to walk in. And that will keep telling you who you are in a deeper and deeper way, to the point where when you're 30, 35, like, you'll be really clear if you keep doing the work and you keep moving in that direction. So I hope that for you. I hope that for your listeners, if it's something that they want. And I'll probably just leave you with this kind of thought that I was taught very, very long ago, and that is that pain in life is inevitable.
Yeah.
But misery is optional.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah. I guess like my closing statement is thank you for being on the show and sharing your experience. Yeah, I hope we can kind of like just, I guess, work together to like in the future if you want. So
stay in touch with me, please. You've got my email. Stay in touch and let me know when this comes out, and I'll share it with my my list, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Also, I do have a question before we sign off. So my roommate mentioned, because he's like more of the marketer of the podcast. So he asked me if to get a picture from you.
Oh yeah, I'll send you a picture.
Help. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Micah.
Nice to meet you too.
Seriously, congratulations on what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
It's important.
Yeah.
It's important. Keep doing it. And I'm glad to be able to support it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.